Hello Internet. This is the second part of the video series explaining my Undertale AU, the shifted duology. Further starts with a bit of lore on Kelvin Turner. He gained his powers by putting raw monster magic into his bloodstream and by talking to someone mysterious who had tried to transform himself. Next we see from the failed experiment's point of view as they're treated and wake up blind and deformed in the hospital. They've been fully turned into a monster in order to stop the melting, and the fresh parasite has been taken away for further study. The other former subjects greet them and help them get around. Later that night, Adwin is tortured with nightmares about draining Jade, Takala is throwing up liquid negativity, and Nico's eyes are leaking determination. Saul is losing his mind trying to clean up various black substances. Blue is still living in his new universe, but is suffering from some sort of sickness that makes him glitch. He gets checked out by Undyne, revealing that some of his ribs have changed color. He goes to the surface to think, but ends up accidentally ripping open a portal to what we as readers know as the anti-void. Curious, he walks into the empty space and gets stuck, only managing to escape once he rips reality back open on accident. Without a destination in mind, he winds up at a strange facility on a hill, being promptly abducted, having one of his ribs cut off, and being tagged and chipped. Terrified after the experience, he runs away as soon as he's released. From another point of view, we get a look into the nature of this mysterious place. Everyone captured and taken here gets a year to live before becoming a monster. In that time, they are employed to research other transformed subjects. One of these captured humans, Charlie, witnesses her friend's time run out. She is allowed to say goodbye, but is forced to watch him turn into Vantablack. Back with our old characters, Survivor has a nightmare about Fresh and wakes up in Lamia's embrace. They begin to panic over the fact that the parasite was not killed upon being taken from their body, and run for the laboratory to check and see if it's there. Survivor and Lamia find a corpse in the center of the room, covered in newly hatched fresh parasites. They're confronted by the scientist leading the project, Cameron Facnan, and are shooed out. Dr. Facnan starts down the hallway, but is followed by Coda. He tracks him deep into the wilderness, where he sees him hand a specimen to a shadowy figure. Upon returning, he slams into Survivor, and the two compare notes. They conclude that it was a fresh parasite that was given to the strange figure, one with some bizarre new abilities. We see from Charlie's point of view again, and she has 7 days to live. Upon hearing a strange scream, she breaks out of her cell to investigate, only for a horrific abomination to attack the people guarding it and be shot dead in front of her. It's then that she decides to make her escape. We don't get to see this escape yet, of course, as we're cut off by Survivor's point of view again. They're relaxing at the river and are joined by Template, and the two discuss their shared experiences of wanting to destroy dangerous entities. After a while the pair are interrupted by a panicked Blueberry. Template becomes hostile after realizing he's becoming an error like himself, and led him home in hopes that he's able to be fixed. Saul breaks down upon encountering his new friend, vowing to do everything in his power to fix him despite knowing he can never be human again. Coda leaves to check out Dr. Facnan's lab with Jade, and find the room cleared out with the exception of a few human souls in containers being feasted upon by fresh parasites. They gain access to the back room, where they encounter a statue of a strange, malformed purple creature that clearly used to be human. Coda reaches out to touch it, only to learn that it's not a statue. It's taxidermy. When they return to tell Saul, he's trying to jog Blue's memory. This causes him to panic and spiral over the thought of being human, and he staunchly refuses any attempt to regain some semblance of humanity. In Chapter 65 we finally get to witness Charlie's escape. She runs for the greenhouse, escaping up a tree and then running for the exit. She never makes it, as overseers close in around her from all sides and her legs give out. But someone else does manage to escape. After revealing the truth about Facnan's lab to the group, that being that an experiment called Project Petromizone was being conducted to turn humans into fresh monsters called freshmen and failed miserably, Coda wanders into the woods and hears a scream for help. He comes across an unconscious teen and takes him back to Dr. Fox's facility, where he wakes up and is questioned. Rehan reveals that he's from the tunnels, and that going back would be suicide. He knew Charlie and had a crush on her before her capture, and is convinced that he has to leave her behind. Hearing this, what was originally research quickly becomes a rescue mission. Charlie, though, is not becoming one of the freshmen. She's falling victim to something that we as readers know as Operation Vista. A device is implanted between her shoulders and she's taken to a large white room in which she'll spend the next month transforming. The overseers don't tell her who she'll become, but based on her environment, it's plainly obvious. Rihan and the group head for the tunnels as soon as they're able, but are halted by Takala starting to leak negativity. Rihan takes a pill out of his pocket that was made for Vantablack, warning that it may have adverse effects on the human body. Takala doesn't care, swiping it from him, and is quickly overwhelmed by euphoria. With her being too dizzy and affectionate to continue onward, they stop to rest for the night. Survivor, despite being blind, wanders off alone to have a moment of introspection, but is knocked out and abducted. During the time Survivor is unconscious, we briefly catch up with Charlie. The person controlling her changes, Devland, is cruel and merciless, constantly reminding her of the fact that she's turning into error and describing her future in detail. Alone in the White Room, she begins to spiral, realizing all too late that her prison is meant to simulate the anti-void. Survivor wakes up strapped to a hospital bed, but the people talking to them seem genuinely kind. After confirming they're not from another universe, they ask if they want to be made human again, to which they eagerly agree. Saul and the others panic upon realizing Survivor is gone, finding evidence that they were taken to the tunnels. Survivor, transforming, realizes that there is, in fact, flesh replacing their bones, but ponders the scientific logistics of being turned human again. They know it's possible, but they can't sense the amount of magic it would take. Rihan and the group approach the tunnels, debating over how to get past the tight security. Adwin ends up immobilizing the guards with his ink while Lamia overwrites them. Entering the facility through an old evacuation route, they pause to read journal entries and news reports pinned to the walls. They tell the story of how Dr. Turner got his magic, and how the overseers started their transformations, both using monster fossils from their own universe's Mount Ebot, which erupted a long time ago and killed all the monsters within. They're too distracted that they don't notice a humanoid white mass of goop approaching them. Lamia attacks it, only for it to take her shape and slink away. They read more entries, but eventually realize something awful: Coda has disappeared. He wakes up in a cell and calls for his sister, only for her spirit to be killed in front of him. Her murderer steps into the light, revealing that his body has been halfway changed into that of ex-Gaster. He forces Coda onto a surgery table, threatening to torture him until his soul is ready to shift. The strange man laments about the cruelty of humanity, telling Coda that climate change destroyed his island home, and reveals his plan to perfect humanity by turning them all into monsters. Back with Survivor, their changes have taken a turn for the worst. As they regain their vision and realize they can only see magic and determination signatures, they realize something is deeply wrong. They lunge to attack the human in front of them, but are swatted away with one hand. As their change completes and the person changing them begins writing an audio log, they realize they've become a fresh parasite. As the group traverse the tunnels, things quickly start to go wrong. Nico hears a voice talking to him, and wanders off. It sounds to him like Boren, who was his boyfriend at the time when the two of them got turned into Killer and Dust. Nico finds him still in Dust's body, and despite knowing something is wrong, succumbs to hypnosis and subsequent transformation. As Nico is busy with the mimic, the half-ex-Gaster stranger speaks through a small screen to the rest of the group, telling them what he's doing to Coda and promising that if they all willingly transform themselves he'll let him go. Dust, formerly Nico, enters the room, shocking his girlfriend Scarlet into silence. Adwin is next to disappear, but we don't get to see what happens to him immediately. We do, however, see a rather peculiar transformation happen to Libby. She's attacked by an Undertale Sans mimic, but steps into a trap that drops black goop meant to turn her into Killer onto her head simultaneously. The two combine, making her into a fusion between the two characters known as Quasar. Lamia is filled with grief and rage. Meanwhile, Devland starts to make Charlie love her transformation into Error. After all, Error is dangerous and unpredictable, so it's better if he trusts his captor. However, turning up the pleasure variable goes wrong, causing Charlie to glitch out and crash. She's given a stimulant to bring her out of it, but it accelerates the changes to the point where she's left with only a week to change. Saul, despite being racked with grief, refuses to change back into Dream when offered the opportunity. The hybrid man lets him and Coda see each other through the screen, before locking the room and making it release a transformative gas. Rihan finds a note from a stranger and an air vent, pulling everyone to safety. That is, except for Takala. She and Saul try and fail to open the vent, leaving her to fall. She quickly transforms into something not humanoid, while Saul waits for the vent to reopen. When it does, he reveals to the group that she's turned into a Temmie. Before the group can properly react to this information, Scarlet is attacked by a freshman. Adwin, meanwhile, is taken to the plasma field, a grid of transformative substance meant to turn him into Parable. The overseers taunt him as he picks his way through, and he's lucky enough to nearly make it to the end before the stuff activates. At the end of the chapter, we find that Survivor has been given a host, someone who was turned into themselves. They refuse to possess them, and the two escape together to find help. Back with the remaining humans, the freshman injects its venom into Scarlet's brain and makes her attack Chrysantha. Nico rushes to defend his cousin, but the parasite monster prepares to attack him. Luckily, someone swoops in to save the day, someone dressed in colorful clothing with sunglasses that reflect her thoughts. She drives the freshman back before checking to make sure everyone is okay and asks them to follow her to the storage room. Catalina reveals that she was part of Project Petramizone, but regressed completely and found a host in the form of someone whose brain was fried at the scene of a mass escape. She tends to Chrysantha's wounds as she speaks, but can't help but be disturbing and untrustworthy. Coda and Adwin transform, with the former being allowed to choose his new body. He chooses Delta Sans, as that was who his sister turned into before her death. A delta-shaped mimic is provoked to attack him, and in his broken state he quickly succumbs to his new nature. Adwin pretends to enjoy the change to distract the overseers, before running and flying through an open window. He hurries to get Jade, but the weight of the knowledge that all his friends probably ended up like him overwhelms him and he loses control of his wings. Devland reveals to Charlie her role in the overseers' plans. Once all of humanity has been converted into monsters, she will destroy this universe. Of course, Charlie refuses, not that she has a choice in the matter. Devland brings her to meet some clients in favor of this plan, and we're formally introduced to the power of Drystan Acheros, the man who was partially turned into Ex-Gaster and the mastermind behind the tunnels. He vows to make Charlie into his perfect world destroyer. Adwin wakes up with a dislocated wing and a panic attack over not being pale. He runs into some crows, who recognize him as Parable and heal him, before he sets off to find Jade. Jade is poring over old notebooks when Drystan Acheros hijacks the raid sirens, issuing a broadcast warning humanity that they will soon be all turned into monsters. Adwin arrives to tell her what's happened, and she's not sure they can save everyone in time. She agrees, however reluctantly, to turn Adwin back into himself and give him the same sort of transformation pendant she has that will allow him to turn into Pale whenever he wants. Together with Template, who has constructed a stealth jet for them to ride in using his stylus, they infiltrate the tunnels. Catalina and Survivor run into each other in the vents, and bond over shared trauma. Cat gives them an MRE to eat instead of Hockey's soul, and tells them that Soul's mission to save their missing friends is fruitless. Charlie, tormented by emotional changes, is relieved when Rihan finally comes to save her. They don't have long, however, before Devland returns, so all he's able to do is help her relearn how to walk before leaving. The remainder of the group splits up, with Rihan going to rescue Charlie, Catalina and Saul going to rescue Coda, and Lamia and Nico looking for a way to turn themselves back. Rihan takes Charlie into the vents, but Devland figures out their plot and captures them as they fall through into a laboratory. Devland shoves Rihan into a glass container and turns him into ink. Charlie, devastated, doesn't fight back as she's led back to her room. After a brief struggle, Coda is captured. As for Lamia and Nico, their plan goes horribly. In an attempt to capture an overseer, Nico activates a beam that will erase his memory, but is knocked away at the last second by Lamia. It changes her instead, and Drystan Acheros is alerted to their presence. Scarlet, whose brain was dormant for a while, activates, finishing her task of mauling Chrysantha. When the group converge at the storage room, they're shocked by the carnage, and Catalina determines that the only way to heal Chrysantha is to transform her. Nico is appalled by this, but after being literally slapped back to his senses he races to turn her back into Kara. Outside the tunnels, the transformations have already begun. A tornado of magic sweeps across the city as Blue, nearly fully Bluebearer at this point, watches. He decides that, with his new error powers, he's going to put a stop to it. Meanwhile with Charlie, she's fighting mental changes. Acheros asks her some basic questions, to which she struggles not to respond as error would. Eventually her strings start to come in, and she pulls them out with some coaxing. After admiring her new face for a while, a Sans is brought in for her to kill. She hesitates, but soon gives in to her new instincts. Acheros then teaches her how to make puppets from string and dust, having her kill 3 other monsters in the process. With Acheros having them cornered, Catalina prepares for the worst. The power cuts out due to Blue fighting the tornado, causing everyone to panic. Ominous sounds come from outside the room, and Lamia disappears. Needing all hands on deck, Catalina orders everyone to start changing their friends back while the memory rays are down. Coda, Libby and Nico return successfully. Due to the power outage, Charlie breaches containment. She quickly hunts down Devland, tying him up with her new strings and violently dismembering him. The group have to pass by the freshman enclosure if they want to escape, but Catalina, in search for something to make herself human again, decides to enter the empty containment unit. Except, it isn't quite as empty as it seems. They run for the observation room in the back, and the freshman bursts through the glass behind them. Survivor grabs a gun off the back wall, turning around and shooting the abomination directly down the gullet. With the freshman dead, Catalina finds blueprints for a cure, a surgical one. Neither of them can be themselves again. Scarlet, who disappeared after the incident with Chrysantha, wakes up about to transform. The overseers have discovered a specific frequency that makes the soul regress into a monster state if the victim has been previously transformed. They test this on her, and the results are gruesome. Charlie, now carrying a puppet of Devland, runs into who used to be Rehan in the endless corridors. He refers to her as his boyfriend and is confused when she moves to attack, and Charlie realizes she's canon error, but he's fanon ink. Enraged, she begins to attack. Their battle interrupts our group's escape, and they recognize error as Charlie. Clearly unable to save her at this stage of her transformation, they sneak by into an adjacent hallway, only to realize that Survivor and Catalina have gone missing. Catalina approaches from the shadows, lamenting about her hunger and instincts, and strikes a deal with Saul. He lets her possess him, and she'll let the rest of his friends go free. This was her intention all along, but their desperation grew on her. Saul accepts, but Survivor interrupts, shooting Kat's host in the heart. The parasite slinks off, and they head for the exit, all except Libby, who's determined to save her sister. When she finds her, the two have a heartfelt moment as Lamia's memories are returned to her. The group enter the room where the human subjects are kept, and are all promptly captured by guards. After a while of being trapped in cells, Drystan Acheros takes Saul to have a chat over coffee. He offers to turn his friends back into their true selves in exchange for Charlie. Saul agrees as long as he can show proof of his claims and turn Takala back. Acheros obliges, but turns her into Nightmare. Saul lunges for him, but the coffee has had some kind of adverse effect on him and he collapses to the floor. Acheros tells him it contains a transformation potion, and as Saul turns into Chino, he's suddenly able to feel every negative emotion. The bad ending happens here, where Drystan Acheros constructs a world where Takala, along with Nico and Libby, torture Chino-fied Saul and he can do nothing to stop it. In the good ending, Acheros instead goes to capture Charlie. He prepares to override her and enact his plan to destroy the universe, but is interrupted by something bursting through the wall. Meanwhile, Adwin and Jade, who have been wandering for days, are attacked by a freshman. They shift into their monster forms to fight, ending up bursting through the wall into the room where Charlie is being held. Jade's leg is broken in the scuffle, and Adwin nearly gives in to Pale's urges, but despite this they decide to help her. Jade takes a completely error-fied Charlie back to the jet where Template is waiting, and Adwin continues to look for his missing friends. He finds Libby, Coda, and Nico about to be transformed in the same way Scarlet was, and breaks them out. They then use Coda's super herring to find Lamia, Chrysantha, Survivor, and Takala. Takala leads them to Saul, and together they finally break out of the tunnels. Drystan Acheros awaits them outside, complimenting them on their intelligence, but quickly moves to overwrite them. Adwin stops him, and he uses the button on him first. However, in the same moment, Adwin throws his transformative pendant over his neck, cancelling it out but letting him think it worked. Template takes his chance to rush him from behind, but is quickly knocked to the ground. Acheros is pleased to have an error variant at his mercy, overriding him into accepting his instincts. It doesn't work as intended, and he and Adwin begin fighting. Chrysantha realizes Nico is missing, having gone after Scarlet, but this worry is quickly quelled by fellified Scarlet and Catalina bursting out of the tunnels, the latter with Nico on her host's shoulders. A freshman is hot on their heels, prompting them all to run for the jet. With the jet requiring a few minutes to prepare for takeoff, Catalina decides to deal with the creature. She leaps down and rushes it, quickly followed by Survivor as they witness her get her ass kicked. Survivor shoots the beast several times, and Cat deals the killing blow. She wants Survivor to shoot her too, but they're out of bullets. With the jet ready to take off, they leave Cabby and race for safety. To everyone's collective horror, the freshman, somehow still alive, begins chasing them down. They nearly make it before Hockey is mauled, but Survivor themselves is taken to safety. In a split-second decision, Survivor drops the emergency explosives, ensuring nobody will ever end up like them. After returning, Saul attempts to integrate Charlie into the group, but it doesn't work out very well. Template is extremely hostile toward her, and her mental changes are too severe. She helps bring Blueberry back to his normal state, but eventually decides to live out the rest of her days in the anti-void. As for Survivor, with a lot of effort and a lot of magic they're able to be converted back into their skeleton self. They're gifted a new weapon, a staff made to look like a fresh parasite's mouth, allowing them to control the magic they drained from Hockey. They tie a strip of their old parasite flesh around their eyes to solidify the new look, and swear to kill any fresh parasite they come across. 15 years later, Charlie, now fully Error, returns to his home AU. Saul and Takala, Nico and Scarlet, and Adwin and Jade each have a child now. Their names are Heather, Vexus, and Dakota, respectively. Saul discusses how he feels about all of humanity being gone, and Error agrees to protect this universe. The story ends on a bittersweet note.